season 3, episode 2 with Sharon Michalove. Also my second attempt at doing a YouTube video, so we will see how it goes. What has happened in the last week? Well, baseball season, playoffs are in full gear. The stupid Yankees have made it to the ALCS, which is a bummer. But I'm hoping the Guardians of Cleveland can beat them. That would be nice. The Dodgers also advanced, which is also another bummer for a Boston fan. So I'm hoping the Mets, which is weird to say, beat them. They have kind of a fun story happening. So I kind of want to see how that goes. I am currently watching the Patriots in the background. Today was Drake May Day. He's our rookie starter. And I think Texas just scored another touchdown, so I don't know what's happening. We're down by like a lot, but we do have one touchdown, so yay Drake. But he also has one interception, so 6-1. Oh no goal. I guess there was a penalty. Okay, I'm not going to watch the game while I talk this. The Celtics preseason's heated up. They won both games in Abu Dhabi. They just opened at the TD Garden preseason last night and won by like 50 or 30 or something astronomical. They play again tonight, which is nice, something to listen to. But the Bruins have also started, and one of the things, I'm going to lead with that, with what I'm obsessed with this week, which is Jeremy Swayman signed his contract, so we have him for 8 more years. He's the goalie. He was part of the tandem with Linus Ullmark when they did the goalie hugs. They moved on from Linus, which is a bummer because I wanted them to stay together forever, like the bros that they are. And it was kind of, sad. My cat's looking at me. I'm sorry. I also met Morgan Geeky this summer at a signing. And for those that don't know, who don't follow me on Facebook and stuff, first of all, how dare you? Second of all, please follow me. And third of all, Morgan Geeky was my mom's favorite player of the past couple seasons. He, when I was growing up, I had a baby blanket, still do. Yes, I'm 42 and I have a baby blanket. And for some reason we call it a Geeky. And so when Morgan Geeky started playing for the Bruins, my mom was like, that's great. That's what we call it. And he's my favorite player. So I told him that story like a big weirdo. And he was like, I've never heard that before. And I was like, because my family is different. And so the Bruins, they're 2-1. They lost the first game to the Panthers, which kind of seems the Panthers have our number. What are you going to do? I think they play again tomorrow, or on Monday. What else am I obsessed with, you may ask? Well, I'm on TikTok. Nicole Aslan 38. 38 because that's how old I was when I started it, not because of Curt Schilling. I actively dislike Curt Schilling. So just because I'm a Red Sox fan, that does not mean why it is. But I've been on TikTok and I was just trying to find the creator and I couldn't find it, but I was well and fully influenced by the same person, one of the same people that influenced my bookmark garland, Shire Shelf on TikTok. She does lots of dobs of the day and she's always doing it like this with her Kindle, and I became obsessed. So I bought a clear cover and then I bought some cute little backgrounds. This first one is Cozy Ghosts. And this one was from, I wrote it down, Dark Metal Forge Prints on Etsy. And I also bought a couple of other ones. I'm going to show you this one last because I have other stuff from them. But we have this one here. We got a nice little bookshelf, so that'll be like the everyday one. And that is from the Floral Flamingo shop. I also have this spooky dark gothic one. I guess you can't see it because it's a little shiny, but it's like bookshelves with spooky stuff. That's from, I wrote it down. They were a spooky name. I put it in their thing and I was like, don't lose the thing because you're going to want to talk about it. And there we go. So they are from the Strange Magic Etsy shop. Look at their cool little logo. It's spooky. Spooky stuff. And then also one that I got, because obviously it's cat ghosts and cat witches. This is from Claudia's book club. She also sent 2 bookmarks with it, which, if you know me, I love a bookmark. So here's the bookmark she sent, which I love, obsessed with. So check her out on Instagram and Etsy. Check all of them out on Instagram and Etsy if you're uncreative like me and you just want something to decorate your Kindle with. And then I bought the pop socket so that I can grip it at night. But I bought it clear so that you could see the cool backgrounds. So I was influenced. I used to have a full case. That's the other thing I'm obsessed with. The third thing I'm obsessed with this month, I guess that's maybe 4 or 5, but you get it. The Great British Bake Off's back. And it's just so nice on Fridays to be able to load up the Netflix and watch just delightful British people bake. Um, this week was Bread Week, which always is terrifying for the bakers. And one of the person who went home was actually a favorite, and I'm kind of bummed. But then there's this beautiful man named Dylan on there, and then there's this great guy named Andy who's like, there's always one guy on the season who's like an alpha, but he's a mechanic. He's like a blue collar worker guy, and he's got a pencil in his ear, and he does like engineering and construction, and he's just delightful. He talked about there was one episode where everybody kept falling ill, and he said, "Are we sure we're not on a British mystery?" And I was like, I feel you. That would be really great. So if you have written a Great British Bake Off inspired mystery, I will read it and I will love it, and I will definitely promote it because it is one of my favorite shows. So, which leads perfectly into the person I'm interviewing this week, Sharon Michalove, who is a former history, well, she went for history, she did library, she did education. She's kind of like a Renaissance woman, which I'm sure she would appreciate because we did just talk about how that was her thesis was, well, post-Renaissance, but still in that historical time frame. Her cat is Caroline Bingley, which for all my Jane Austen fans, holla. And so we had a great, we didn't talk, we got a little hung up on the history and the short form, long form writing, but she's going to Paris in a couple weeks, so we're going to definitely try to reconnect so that I can find out how that went, and hope you enjoy. All right. So welcome back to Baseball, Books, and Banter. Today's special guest, is Sharon Michalove from the Chicago area. Well, Chicago proper, but kind of around the Chicago area for the last bunch of years. She is a guppy, and that is how we found each other, because I put out the siren call and authors flock to me, which is what I like. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. I actually am in Chicago. I grew up in the suburbs, but then I spent 40 years living in downstate Illinois
Oh,
because I was at the University of Illinois for many, 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 many
and
years.
how many degrees is it? 4 from there?
Four, yeah, I
Yeah.
have 4 degrees. I got my first degree there because I had a state scholarship, and what do? You want to go to the best state school you can when your father says has to be
Yeah.
a state school. And then when I went back to school, I thought, well, I'll just go back there for my master's degree because I can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the early 1970s. And my father was saying, I'm not paying for another degree for you because you could have stayed on for that extra year and
Just
the
got it
state
all.
would have paid for it because you're getting a library degree, which wasn't my first choice. But
Oh,
that, oh no, I wanted to go back and get a master's degree in history. And my
oh,
father talked
yeah.
me
That sounds
he
like a
talked
dad.
me, yeah, he talked me into getting a teaching degree.
Okay.
No jobs when I got out, and I hated student teaching. But my dad was a school superintendent, so
Oh, he wanted
he
you to
had
get
his
the family
agenda.
business. Yeah.
Right. So then he wanted me to be a school librarian. I did not go into that kind of librarianship, but he kept saying, well, if you go on and you get a master's degree in history, there's nothing you can do with it. You won't be able to get a job. So my first day in library school, they say, there used to be a lot of jobs in libraries, and now there's none.
Oh no.
Like,
Oh
oh,
no.
good. Another
Great.
degree
I'm
I
glad I
can
signed
go.
up for this program.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks,
yeah,
guys.
yeah. So anyway, that was fun. And
Yeah.
then the other 2 degrees I got because I was already there working for the university, and that
Okay.
meant that whatever I had to pay for, I didn't have to pay tuition and fees.
Nice. Oh, so what are the other 2 degrees in?
I have a master's in history,
There you
and
go.
and
See?
I have a doctorate in the history of education.
Oh, wow. Gosh. History. Yeah. I wanted to go back for my master's in library science after I graduated undergrad, but at the time, this was pre-pandemic, and so nothing was virtual. And the school, I was living in DC at the time, and the only school that had a master's program, it was either American or Catholic, and both were in town, and I'd have to take like the metro to get there. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that at night, like by myself. That seems dangerous. So I just kept my English grade. I ended up going to George Mason and got my master's in arts management. And now I work in healthcare. So, it is what it is. And right. and write, of course. But yeah, tell people a little bit about what you write and how you write and all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, so I write mostly romantic suspense. My books are romantic suspense. Although one of them, Dead in the Alley, is also a mystery.
Hmm.
So the romantic suspense, you know who the bad guys are, right? Or, early on.
Right.
I have a company called Global Security Unlimited. They all work for Global Security Unlimited. And I actually was a finalist for the Chanticleer Genre Series Award this year because they liked the books.
Yeah.
Not enough to be first place or grandmaster, but still,
It's an honor to be
making
nominated.
that's right, and making it all the way to the finals was
Yeah.
was great. I was nominated in some other categories for other things, but this was like the big deal. But
Pinnacle, right.
yeah, so that was really good. That's 3 books. And in the meantime, I've written 15,000 word story, which
Wow.
is in the series that's in an anthology called Protect My Heart.
Oh.
And then Dead in the Alley was written as a standalone, but now I have people who want to read more about those characters, so I have ideas for some other
Oh.
books. And it takes place in Michigan, in northern Michigan. So just to let people who aren't from Michigan or the Midwest know, northern Michigan is not the Upper Peninsula. Northern Michigan is the top of the Lower Peninsula, the top of the mitten.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
Not
not
this
not
part.
up here. It's this part
Yeah.
here. Yeah. Um, and that was not my choice.
Oh.
My choice probably would have been to write it to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the morning I woke up with this idea, my characters were like, has to be in northern Michigan. I'm like, I've only been to northern Michigan to Petoskey
Yeah.
and only for knitting
Oh,
retreat. So I know nothing about that
right.
area. But I spent a lot of time in the southern part of Michigan. So I'm like, well, how about doing it at South Haven? How about doing it at,
Yeah.
around these lakes that I went to when I was a kid? No, no, has to be northern Michigan.
How about we do it in Paris? Like, what are we doing, characters? Like, why are you
No,
sending
no,
me to the
no.
north of Michigan?
No, two of my three romantic suspenses have a whole bit in Paris, and in
Oh,
fact, the
nice.
second book, At the Crossroads, the climax, the denouement, is all in Paris.
Oh, okay. Did you go?
Oh, I've been to Paris, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I went
I
once and
didn't.
I'm like, love it. So,
Well, I'm actually going again.
oh,
I'm leaving at the end of November, and I won't be back until almost the middle of December. Not because I'll be in Paris the whole time.
no.
I'm going to a thing called Paris Writing Cafe,
Oh,
and it's run by a woman who I've been on her list for a long time, and I've never she
yeah.
advertises these every year, and I'm always like, I've got other
Oh,
stuff to
okay.
do. I can't go. It's expensive. Uh, and she's actually in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
I mean, people go from all over, but she
Yeah.
only takes 8 people at a time. And but she used to write for the Chicago Tribune. And then she started doing this, and she teaches at one of the colleges in the Chicago area, and her husband or partner or whatever he is poet, and they do it together.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so I'll be there writing for 7 days.
That's
And
awesome.
then, because the cheapest flight I could find was on Iceland Air, I'm going to have a 4-day layover in Iceland on my way home.
You're the third person in the past 2 months who I know have been to Iceland and are going to Iceland in the past 3 months, and they absolutely loved it. So you're gonna love it too. I just know it.
Oh yeah.
The one of them is my favorite, one of my favorite librarians at the Abington Public Library. Joanne, her and her husband went, and she said it's almost like a postcard when you see some of the scenery, and every step you take, it looks more magical. So she's like, I kept taking pictures and deleting old ones because every step it got better and better. And I was like, that sounds. And then, of course, they had the Northern Lights every night. And she said, of course, we had the Northern Lights this week. I personally did not see them, but apparently lots of people in Massachusetts did.
But
Just
apparently lots of people in the Chicago area did too, and I
okay.
did.
I looked out and then they're like, you have to take your camera out. I'm like, guys, I'm like in my pajamas. I'm not going outside in my pajamas.
Oh, and then you've got to aim not knowing where
Yeah,
you're aiming because you can't see.
just
Yeah.
somewhere out there. I'm like, you know what? Everybody on the internet's going to post pictures. I'll be like, yes, I lived through that time. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I did not see that. So that's an amazing trip because first you're going to spend some time in France
Mhm.
writing, which is like
Yeah.
you're like Ernest Hemingway or something, and then
Well, and she's also going to, so every morning we're going to write in a cafe
oh,
in the Marais district of Paris, where I lived for one summer.
bonjour. Yeah.
So I'm very, yeah, in fact, it's funny because she said, well, the hotel that you decided to book is, right on the Rue de Bretagne. And I said, yeah, I know. And that was my shopping street when I
Oh,
lived there. So it's all very cool. And I do know that area. And then she's going to take us on walks
yeah.
and we'll have some meals in common and things. So I'm really looking forward to that. And since there's only 8 writers, it's
Yeah.
kind of, it's going to be
Oh
a
my
very
gosh.
kind of group team sort of
Yeah,
thing.
I have a similar goal like that. You said, you belonged to this group forever and then finally got to go. Ireland writing retreat. I'm obsessed with Ireland basically. I went once for 2 weeks and now I'm like ready to move there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's the same thing. They do like the whole retreat. I'm like, if I'm gonna do a retreat, you might as well go big, and go somewhere where you've never been and all. Well, I've been there, but you know what I mean.
Oh
So yeah,
yeah.
that's one of those things I never quite got over the hump to do is the writers retreat. But I think that's so at the writers retreat, do you have a plan of what you want to write out there, or you just
So it's kind of interesting. She told us that we should probably not bring our computers
oh
because a lot of times we'll be writing at the cafe and then she'll say, okay, let's go take a walk.
oh
And then
right.
you're carrying your computer. So she said, bring a notebook. So I made this notebook on Canva.
Oh, cute. Oh my God. It says, for those that aren't watching on YouTube, it says, let's write Paris, and it has a beautiful cafe scene on it
And then this is
in
the
the
back.
back. Oh my
And
God.
somebody said, so what's inside? I said,
Nothing.
lined paper.
Yeah. Like nothing until I start writing.
So what she said was, we're not going to be writing fiction. What we're going to be writing is nonfiction preparation for writing fiction. So you kind of pick a topic that you think you want to write
Okay.
about for Paris. And in my case, because my books are filled with
Yeah.
food, I'm going to be looking at food. I'm going to be looking at
Oh,
markets.
rough.
This is Christmas time, so the
Oh,
markets are going to be amazing.
oh,
And I'm going to be eating in interesting restaurants. And when I wrote about Paris before, I wrote a lot about restaurants that, in most cases, I had never been to
sure.
because I rented an apartment and
Had to pay for the parking.
I mostly, well, it was kind of a problem because I was there for a research trip. I was not writing fiction, then I was writing history, and I am a published historian. And so I was there on a 6-week research grant.
Yeah.
And when the researchers from the institutes in Paris came to the U of I to be researchers in our fantastic library that we had at U of I, well, they still have, they got their money up front.
Oh.
I got my money from the French the day I left
Oh my
to go to a
gosh.
conference in England on my way home. So I had like no money while I
Yeah.
was there. And all the money I had to go for my rent for my apartment.
Wow.
Yeah, I was not real happy with that. And my
Sure.
my sponsor who had been to the US on the program was like, this is so bad. I am so upset. I keep calling them and saying to them, when is this check going to come? So
Yeah.
so she takes me the day before I'm actually supposed to take the Eurostar across the the English Channel. And then I had to cash it in francs and then change it into pounds.
Oh my God.
Because by that time, all I
Yeah.
needed were pounds. I didn't need francs anymore. I had brought some money with me,
Mhm.
but it was very lean living.
Sure.
Fortunately, living right on the Rue de Normandie, which was the street right next to the Rue de Bretagne, we had great shops.
Okay.
And so I would go to and there was a supermarché, but I didn't buy very much there. That was where I got things like Orangina and stuff like that. Then I went to the boulangerie and I
Yeah.
went to to the fromagière, and I went to the traiteur that sold chicken and potatoes, and the one that sold Greek food and things like that. And then I heated things up. I had no oven.
Oh no.
I had a non-working mic. I didn't have a microwave, and a lot of the traiteur would package things up to be microwaved.
Right.
And then they're like, "What do you mean you don't have a micro-ondes?" And I'm like, I'm
Yeah, I
renting.
don't.
What am I supposed to
Yeah.
do when
And I
and
don't have money to go buy one, guys, because the
right,
French haven't
right,
paid me yet.
that's right. And the toaster oven didn't work. So I had a two-burner stove.
Oh my gosh.
So I would take whatever it was and put it in the frying pan, and then
Mhm.
I put the cover on top, and that's how I heated up all
Hope
my
for the
food.
best.
Yeah, yeah. And I went grocery shopping just about every day because I had, a refrigerator that was that big. So, yeah.
All
So I
this talk
really
of
learned how, yeah,
all
it
this
was,
talk of French markets makes me want to get a baguette like so bad right now, like a fresh baguette. Like, oh, that just sounds so good.
well, that's how I feel about the croissant. Although my
Oh, me
favorite
too.
thing is eclairs, and you cannot find eclairs that are as good in the US. You
Yeah,
cannot find macarons that have as much intense flavor.
sure.
Can't find sorbet or that has that really
Yeah,
intense flavor. So I'm really, really looking forward to
yeah.
um to
The
doing
food,
that. So yeah, so the
but
food
like
is
for real.
great. Yeah, and writing about, how they do all the holiday stuff
Yeah,
because Paris gets a lot dressier now than Chicago does these days.
sure.
No, I can think back to what it was like when I was growing up, and it was amazing. And
Yeah.
now we don't have Marshall Fields anymore.
I know it's kind of like New York the same way. Like, yeah, they have the Macy's, but
Well, we have Macy's, but they don't do
the big
nearly as
thing anymore.
much for all the rest of us as they
Yeah,
do for their, flagship store in New
yeah,
York.
of
Uh,
course.
yeah, so it's
They're
it's just
closing ours, so like they don't even care up here in Boston.
uh,
They're,
well, they did close the one here at Water Tower Place, but we still have the downtown one. But they've the top part of the building now they've rented out to companies and things like that. But no, they've got a Tiffany ceiling in part of the
that's
old
some of
Marshall.
those things that you hate to lose, just some
Yeah.
of the historical.
Well, it's a
I think that's
listed
another
building.
thing I liked about France too. We went to the Galeries Lafayette, and
Uh,
just having the different floors and the bigness, and you kind of felt like you stepped back to when the
mhm,
department stores were like, you know,
mhm.
they had different sections and you could like get everything you ever needed. And yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun time.
They still have all that.
Yeah.
It's just not as good. It's not quite as high
Um,
end. It's not, it is what it is. They're
yeah, of
still selling Marshall Field memorabilia,
course.
a counter right next to one where they're selling Macy's memorabilia. It's very
Yeah.
weird.
The Macy's
Very, very weird.
memorabilia, probably not a big seller, I don't think.
Yeah, probably not.
No,
Maybe people who are tourists don't care,
sure.
but people who live in Chicago, it's a thing. I don't shop there
No.
anymore, but
But yeah,
uh,
and in Boston we have Filene's, so it was the same thing.
right.
We have Filene's and Filene's basement, which there's no more of those. But if I saw a sweatshirt that said Filene's on it, I would be there in a heartbeat. Or Ames, on both of those. That's my
Mhm.
level. But we got distracted by shopping and food, which is how
That's
my
all
life
I can say.
really, really is. But to the writing, so do you prefer writing in the short form, or are you starting to find that you like writing the long form novels now?
Well, I always liked writing in the long form, and I hated writing short stories.
I guess
And
that's the historian in you, right? Like the historians like to explain what happened and what's going on.
yeah. I mean, I would write a book and then it was 110,000 words, and then I would cut out 70,000 word or 30,000 words. And then by the time I'd finished revising, it was still 90,000 words. No, no, I'm a long form writer. What happened was, when I first went back to writing fiction, I was unsuccessful at writing fiction for most of my life. But I decided I was going to try once more after I moved up to Chicago because all of a sudden I was living alone for the first time in my life. I had the cats, but that was it. And I was used to having another person in the house. So, and he was very creative. He was a composer, so
Oh
he,
wow.
yeah, yeah. So I read and he composed, and we both taught. So, so anyway, I joined a bunch of writing groups. And I ended up in a writing group that came out with a group of short stories, and mine was one of them. It was 1,800 words, and it couldn't be more than 1,800 words. And it was really, really hard for me. And I had, we kept saying, he originally said 800 words, and we're like,
My God.
no, I don't think we're not writing flash fiction.
Yeah.
We finally got him up to 1,800 words, and mine was 2,200 words, and then I had to cut 400 words out of it. And I'm thinking, I hate this. I
Yeah.
absolutely hate this. And I didn't feel like I could get a good story out. I've since revised that story, and it came out at 8,000 words, and it's in a collection that I published last year called Relatives and Relationships. And then I wrote another one because I was in this boot camp, Inkers boot camp, and it was in Dallas. It was the first time they had ever done it, and I don't know, 8 of us or so out of that group ended up putting out an anthology.
Okay.
That one was really, both of them were ones where we were told kind of what we had to write in. So in the first one, we all had to write something um, about somebody who ends up meeting this writer who's being celebrated for being 100 years old.
Oh,
Yeah. So the second one, the framing story is it's a sci-fi thing. So we all had to write a sci-fi story, and it had to be a bedtime story for this kid, but we couldn't have anything like the step. It had to be the stepdad and the son trying to
same.
bond, and the son's 8 years old. But we weren't allowed to like have the father go up to tell the story or anything. We had to start in the story, and they had to be the story. So I wrote one called Hockey on the Moon, which one of
That's what
these
it was
days I will
about.
also, yeah, one of these days I will also revise that. Both of those books were published. They're both still available. I used a pen name for them, and then after publishing 2 things with the pen name, what I was trying to do was disaggregate my
Yes,
fiction from my history.
sure.
After trying to have another name, I decided I can't do this. I can't have 2 websites. I can't have
Yeah,
2 Facebook pages. I can't have 2 personalities.
so
It's
much.
just going to be Sharon Michalove. So that's what it is.
Yeah,
And then I started writing long form. I was much happier with that.
yeah.
Then a couple of years ago, this woman, Sandra Sullivan, who is a Sisters in Crime member from California, contacted me and said she was putting together an anthology and would I write a story for it. And I said, well, I don't really write
Yeah.
kind of mystery because it's a Sisters in Crime group. And she said, no, 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 no. So the thing about this is you have to have older characters, like older characters. My characters in that story are 70.
Okay. All right.
And it has to have a happily ever after. And I'm like, so I can write a romance, right?
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah. So the romance it's called Aegean Persuasion. Took me quite a while to write it, and but I think it's pretty good actually. So I have this 70-year-old woman, English woman, who's invited on a Greek islands cruise. And she thinks she's Miss Marple, and so she's trying to figure out who invited her, why she was invited, all this stuff. And she does find out. But the heart of the story is I like to write second chance romance, I have to tell you, is that uh, she's been separated from this guy who her parents didn't want her to marry for 47 years.
Oh,
So it's kind of a take on Persuasion,
yeah.
except that the separation is much longer than
Yeah.
in the Jane
A little
Austen.
bit. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out really well because she's a side character in something I'm writing called Murder at the Great Jane Austen Cook-Off.
Ooh, ooh, that sounds good.
I hope so. It's still only at
I
33,000 because
I
I've had the other things to
I
write.
do love on your website, I looked at your bio that the last line is that you didn't achieve your dream, which was being English or something like that. And
Yeah,
I think that's so funny because it's kind of apropos that I'm interviewing you today because at the beginning, I'm going to record an intro and I talk about things that I'm obsessed with. And right now, it's the Great British Bake Off is back. So I'm back on that jam. And I'm also obsessed with the fact that your cat is named Catherine Bingley. I just every time I read that in the little thing, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I just like it. For those on the YouTube, you will see her tail went across. She'll be in the background, just like Caroline Bingley in the books, kind of metally and always around.
Mhm.
Um, so I
Oh,
just,
very sharp claws and very sharp teeth.
oh, just like
Just like
Bingley.
Caroline Bingley, yes.
I just love that so much because yeah, I Pride and Prejudice obviously is the favorite book and forever. This is going to be a completely like non sequitur, well, a little bit of a sequitur. Uh,
Oh.
what kind of history did you study, or did you want to study, and that you came into later, or
Mhm. Yeah, so I started out doing British history.
okay,
At the age of 14, I read 4 books by Thomas B. Costain on the Plantagenets. And I thought about doing Henry II because I was fascinated with Henry II. But when I got to the point where I started thinking about degree programs, I knew I'd have to learn Latin because it's the
well,
20th century.
yeah,
Right. And my language skills aren't great. And
sure,
I'm taking French, and even my French, even after all these years, and I still work on French, is not fantastic. And
sure.
I knew I couldn't do Latin. So then I thought I'd do Russian history because my
Oh,
family background is all Middle and Eastern European, German, and then a lot of what's now Ukraine, even though at the time it was Russia. Because my grandparents came over one well before before the Russian Revolution and one after.
okay,
So yeah, and my mom's dad's family was Polish. So all in that part of the world.
yep.
But I couldn't learn Russian either. I mean, I am just not good at languages. I was married to a man who had 7 languages and did historical linguistics as a hobby.
A
So
hobby
yeah,
after
yeah,
he composed like a concerto, like geez.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, that's what you do when you end up with 3 degrees in music and
I
then you
guess.
end up being
Wow.
a business manager for your whole career. He had a CPA. I mean, you do what you have to do to make the money so you
That's
can.
a ding, ding, ding.
Mhm. Yep, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, that's kind of what happened to me too, although I did end up in the history department eventually. So anyway, so I was looking at 15th century England because I didn't need to have Latin for it. You notice that Caro just keeps coming in
I
and
know
out.
she's like,
Yeah,
I heard my name. Anybody want to talk to me? She is
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful kitty.
She's so cute. She only weighs 8 pounds. She's tiny, but
Oh,
she just had her third birthday, so she's
oh, she's a
not
babe.
having.
She's a
Yeah,
babe.
yeah. So anyway,
Anyway, sorry guys,
I,
cat talk.
so right. So then I was doing kind of the Wars of the Roses.
Okay.
So that was my stuff. And then when I went on for my master's degree in history, you do a little bit of this and you do a little bit of that because that's how it works. And I didn't write a thesis because I was going to be going on for a PhD.
Hmm.
And when I went to do my PhD in the Department of Educational Policy Studies,
Oof.
which had a history section, almost everybody did American. I
Oh,
was not interested in doing American. And so when I talked to the department head and he said, well, because I was going to do multicultural education because
yeah.
I wanted to be a dean.
Yeah.
The whole thing was to be a dean. I never got to be a dean, but oh well. So he said, no, 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 with your background, you should be doing history. And I said, yeah, but almost everybody in the department's doing American. I'm not interested in that. He said, no, we have a person who used to do American who now does European.
Okay.
Now, his specialty was ancient Greece and the Renaissance,
Oof.
which wasn't really what I was doing because I was doing the very late Middle Ages. So that was the thing. Um, and then I went to talk to Paul, and he said, "Oh, no, 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 you can do 15th century England. You can do education in 15th century
Yeah.
England." So we talked about that, and he said, "But you have to do women." And I'm like, "Excuse me? Excuse
Yeah.
me?"
I can't do men too.
Well, that was the conversation. He said,
Yeah.
"Look, work on the women first, and then
Yeah.
if you've still
The
got
juice
space,
for it.
then you can do
Yeah.
the comparison with the men's education." Well, I ended up writing over 300 pages on women's education, and he said, "This is great. You're done.
Oh,
Congratulations."
that's awesome.
So my dissertation was on women's education in late 15th in late medieval and early modern England. So it
Wow.
was essentially the 15th and the very early 16th century, because once you start getting into the Reformation, the documents change.
Yeah.
You kind of want to stay in something where the documents are
Sure.
going to be the same. I couldn't go research in an archive because I had a full-time job. At
Right.
the
Right.
point, I was in my 40s, and my husband couldn't leave his job either. So I had to work with printed primary sources. So that was the main thing, was figuring out how I was going to do that. And then I got really interested in cultural exchange.
Hmm.
And so I spent the rest of my time until I retired and stopped doing history as a field, working on cultural exchange primarily between the court of Burgundy and Venice,
Hmm.
and also looking at the Ottoman Empire, the end of Byzantium, that kind of stuff. But I didn't really need to worry about languages at that point, since I
Yeah.
wasn't learning Greek, I wasn't going to be learning Turkish, and
Right.
my Italian is very poor. But you have French, and French was one of the two languages of
Right.
Burgundian court, so that was okay.
Oh my goodness.
So that's how I got into those things.
That's
And
cool.
the central part of my dissertation was the first chapter in a book called Women's Education in Early Modern Europe.
Oh,
So for anybody who wants to
interesting.
read that, I mean, you can go to a university library and
Yep.
maybe get the
Find it.
thesis you want, but as they tell you, the thesis is not the book.
No, 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 no. And not that I know, not that I've done that, not that I know, but that seems to make sense to me because the thesis is very, very thesis. I don't want to say thesisy because that's not a word, but you guys, you know what I mean. Like it's
Yeah, it's very
dry
academic. It's
text
got it's yeah, it's got
supposed
even
to
more
be.
apparatus, and
Yeah,
it's written for a committee to,
other
yeah. Well,
academics.
the collection is written primarily for other academics too, but it's
It's in
not the same as
chunks.
something that you have to present
Yeah,
to a dissertation committee to
right.
prove a particular argument in
Yeah,
a specific sort of way. The biggest problem I had was I had to have it passed by the person in the college who vets these things. They don't have to read it, but they check to make sure all the style is right and all
right.
these kinds of things. And I handed it to this woman, and she goes, "It's too long." And I said, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "It's too long." And I said, "Well, my committee doesn't think so."
Yeah,
And she said, "Usually they're only about 100 pages long." And I'm thinking to myself, that would be a master's thesis in history.
yeah.
That would not be I mean, so I looked at
Doctoral.
her, I said, "Look, I know people who've written 800-page
Yeah.
ones." Oh, she was so mad at me. So she got mad at the way I did my footnotes, and I had to fix all that.
Ugh,
And fortunately, I could do a universal change
yeah.
and have a global change and have the whole thing fixed at once. I just turned them all to endnotes, fixed the problem that she had with them, and then I changed them back to footnotes.
Geez,
And
one gatekeeper can do that. Like that's
oh yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't like these footnotes. Okay.
Well, because she had to find something that was a
Yeah.
problem. So that was her problem. And what I did was, because I used to be an editor, I had the number and then I put a space and then I started the footnote because it makes it clearer and it doesn't
Yeah.
run into the text doesn't run into the numbers. She
Oh,
made me take out all those spaces
oh
in, like, I don't know, 600 footnotes or
my
something.
God. I would lose my mind. But we do only have 5 minutes left, and I feel like we've talked a lot about stuff, and I wish I had more. We might have to reschedule another time because I have more research questions.
Well,
Uh,
that would be fine. I'm
yeah.
I'm happy to talk to you again.
Okay, great. I might need somebody early next year we'll do it after your France trip. Oh my God, we can talk baguettes and
Yeah,
croissants.
and then we can talk about
Macarons.
hockey, and maybe my team will have
Exactly.
won
And
one game.
maybe some cycling as well. We'll see what
Oh
happens.
yeah,
But do you have any books that you would recommend or that you loved recently that you'd like the listeners to know about?
sure. Other than mine, right?
Of course, I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been reading a lot of mystery. I read a lot of mystery for years and years and years and
Sure.
years. And after my husband died, I switched to reading rom-com. Now I'm finally back to mystery. So
Yay.
I would recommend several authors. Right now I'm reading Kate Atkinson's newest Jackson Brodie book, which is called something like Murder at the Sign of the Rook or Death at the Sign of the Rook or something. And I also read all of Peter Granger's books. I discovered him recently. They're all English. They're
Yep.
all English. And then all the books that Sally Rigby has written. So those are the ones I'd recommend right now. They're all series. If people haven't read any Jackson Brody, they should watch the Masterpiece Theater series with Jason Isaacs. And I mostly listen to audiobooks these days, and Jason Isaacs is the narrator
That
of
voice.
that book, and also the one right before it, The Big Sky. So they're wonderful. They're kind of confusing, but then she's one of those very complicated writers.
Okay.
I love Granger's uh, DC Smith books, and then he's got a whole bunch of them that are kind of connected to that in other series. He has a new one that's coming out, I think, next month, and then the Sally Rigby books. She's got several series, and they tend to be connected as well.
Love
So
it. I love the British
I
sensibility.
do too. And my yeah, people started with Nancy Drew, but
Sure.
at 8 I was already reading Agatha Christie.
Yeah, I feel like we,
And
especially in the Sisters in Crime group, you'll find a lot of us, even with the Nancy Drew stuff, we were also like, oh, and we also were reading like Miss Marple. And it was like, we're 10 reading about this old woman solving mysteries, but it's just kind of in your head. You're like, that's the life. And then you get Murder She Wrote, and then you get all the British shows.
I
And
just read a book by Marty Wingate, and it's
oh,
called something
yes,
like,
the letters, right?
but this one's called The Bodies in the Library.
Oh, the body.
And it's all about a group. So it's a specialized library that has all these just first editions that were collected by this one woman. But this group that writes fan fiction, oh, I see we're running out of time.
Okay.
That's anyway, it's a fan fiction group, and they're all writing fan fiction of Agatha Christie. So there's a guy who writes just about Miss Marple, but he writes about Miss Marple and zombies. And then there's somebody else who writes about Tommy and Tuppence, and there's somebody else who writes about Poirot. Anyway, so
Cool.
it's a fun book, and it's kind of sort of a little based on The Body in the Library.
Okay, good to know that one I wrote down like immediate. She also
Yeah.
has a book about a woman who does advice columns in Victorian times. I think it's like postscripts to murder, and there's a
Mhm.
I think the third one just came out. I might have read it on NetGalley. So she's Mary Wengate's great, awesome. Where can people find you?
They can find me on they can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Substack. You can just look for my name. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Threads. I'm not on X. I got off of X.
Oh, good for
Uh,
you.
and if I'm going to be doing a thing next week for the Wisconsin Sisters in Crime chapter where I'm moderating. It's Saturday morning, and if you go to their chapter website, you can register for it. You don't have to be a member.
Great.
Um, we're doing a panel on audiobooks.
Okay, good to know.
And I'll be putting in my 2 cents on audiobooks. All my books are on my 4 books are on audiobook, my
Good
4
to know.
novels. And my and there'll be 3 other people who all do audiobooks. In fact, Terry Shepard, who's a friend of mine, not only has his books on audiobook, but he's an audiobook narrator as well.
Awesome. But before you get cut off, thank you so much. I'm like yelling.
Thank you.
Like, because then it goes to less than a minute and then it doesn't tell you. So, like, we're probably at a countdown, but fun, right? Like, I love smart people, and she's definitely one of the smart ones. There are a lot of cameos from Caroline Bingley the cat. My cat's decided not to make some cameos, although I'm looking over my computer screen right now, and Captain has scaled the cat tree. So, she's a little daredevil. She's only 3 months old and working my nerves. No, I love her. She's great. The other two are starting to slowly get along with her, but I don't think that's gonna. I mean, I think they're gonna be friends eventually. They ate treats together today, right? So that's definitely a good sign. I was trying to pull up my Kindle because I realized I forgot last week to like share with you what I've been reading because I got so excited about the podcast being back. But before I get into that, just some upcoming news and notes. My next event is October 21st. It's a Monday night with the awesome Juliet or not Juliet, her name's Julie Bennett Hutchinson. We're friends on Facebook. She writes spooky, scary, paranormal, romance, spooky, not all romance, scary stuff. She's a pretty scary author, is her tagline. And we're going to be at the Whitman Mothers Club at the Knights of Columbus, or the American Legion, one of those two in Whitman. Just kind of doing a little chitty chat talk. And it should be fun because we both have very different books and I think very different publishing not careers, but publishing avenues. So I think it'll be really fun to do. Both of us don't really know what we're going to talk about, but she's like, "Are we doing readings?" And I'm like, "I don't know. We're just gonna wing it." So thank you for Daphne for inviting us to that. Hope we don't disappoint. On October 26th, I will be at the Abington Senior Center Craft Fair. It's actually called the Abington Community Craft Fair, but it's at the Senior Center. I've done it every year. I've talked about this before. It was the first one I ever did with my books, so of course I'm going to do it every year. I'll have both books to sell, hopefully maybe book 3 news, who knows. I just sent in my book cover discovery form, so hopefully in the next couple of weeks or months I will have a book cover to show you for book 3, because I really want to get it out to you guys. So without further ado, you're probably like, Nicole, what are you reading with all those books on your shelves? I actually started a clean out today, and I did like 20 that are going to little free libraries and or savers when I get a chance. So we're starting there. But I'll let you know. See, now that I have the portable, like the Kindle with the socket, the Kindle is where I read a lot of my NetGalley options. So from NetGalley, I'm reading The Shadowland by Signe Pike, which is the continuation of one of her historical kind of little fantasy, because there's magic in it, but also a little bit of the Arthur story and all this other stuff. I am also reading Scandal on a Moon Trek by Diane Valere, who also writes a lot of cozy mysteries. This is the second in the Moon series, and I'm a big sci-fi person, so I wanted to get into that. We also have Deadly Obsession, which is a Carla Simpson, what is it? Is it Bird and Nash? Again, a historical where it's a strong woman, a hot Scotsman, and they solve mysteries together. I have a bunch of other ones on here, but I'm not really reading those. I just finished Kelly Armstrong's latest Rockton novel. I want to say it was called Cold as Hell, but I could be mistaken. It was a good one. I love those kinds of mystery things. So that's kind of what I'm reading at night when I turn the lights off in my room, because I don't like to have the lights on. I just finished The Will of the Many by James Islington. It's like a fantasy Hunger Games, but I wouldn't call it YA because it is pretty dense. Look at all those words. It was good. It was scary. There were parts where people explode, and I don't love that. But once you got halfway through, you're like, I gotta finish. And then the ending really confused me. But if you like Roman kind of history, fantasy stuff, this is a good one. And I say Hunger Games because it's like dark academia, so it's based at a school where people do things, which is very vague, but you know what I mean. Rhys Bowen, who writes one of my favorite Molly Murphy series, wrote The Rose Arbor, which is a historical mystery kind of, you go back in time to, not back in time, that's a woman in the 60s who goes to investigate some missing girls, and stumbles across another mystery, and of course falls in love with a cute architect who used to live at the place. It's based on a town in England that got, I guess, requisitioned by the British government during World War II, I think, to be their like practice. So people just had to pick up and leave like within a week. And now it's an abandoned village that I think you can explore it. There's definitely still some ordnance there, but I think they let you explore every now and then. And I haven't started this one yet, but I'm kind of really excited, and I think all my listeners would be excited for this too, is the official Midsummer Murders interactive novel. Could You Survive Midsummer? And for those that don't know, Midsummer Murders is a British mystery show. I think it's on like 20-something seasons. And basically, people die a lot in those towns, and it's kind of like a heightened version of the British mysteries. And so this is like a choose your own adventure version. And I'm kind of really excited to dive into it. It says, can you avoid a bizarre death in England's most deadly county? So yeah, so I'm really excited. I haven't jumped into it yet, but I used to read Choose Your Own Adventures as a kid, and I think that'll be really cool to read. So that's kind of where I'm at reading wise at the moment. Um, Again, the Patriots suck, so I'm gonna go back and watch that for a little while and bemoan the fact that we just can't seem to get it together. And then I got to feed a cat because she's yelling at me. But again, if you want to reach me, NicoleAslanWriter.com. I'm on all the socials. You'll see this posted everywhere. And hopefully, I will be at a bookstore near you shortly. If you want to order my books, just let me know. But they're also available on the Zon. You can order them through Barnes & Noble. Pretty much anywhere you can order books from, you can buy my book. If you want signed copies, call me. I got some extras. But until the next time, you know what they say. Go Red Sox, or I guess what I say, go Red Sox, and happy reading.